Yeah, it should. Yep, that's it. You got
Okay.
it. All right, awesome. Okay, here we go. We talked about Yom Kippur. We talked about Rosh Hashanah. We talked about Yom Kippur. Okay, now we're going to talk about this tonight. We're going to talk about the holiday of Sukkot. Okay, Sukkot is the booths, literally, classically called. Okay,
Festival of
there's so much to talk about this. This is really one of my favorite subjects and definitely my favorite holiday. I like all holidays, but this one happens to be a really significant one. I have a nickname for the Sukkah. Okay, I'm just going to keep this one and just give some this side. Here you go. Here you go. Okay? You don't have to share. I think we have enough for everybody. Okay. I call this festival, I call it the Jewish cocoon, believe it or not. Okay? I was always fascinated. I mean, everybody, and who cannot be fascinated by the most unbelievable phenomenon that we have in nature today? That a caterpillar can go ahead and weave himself this little blanket, so to speak, that he sleeps in, and he comes out a completely different entity. Well, isn't that, I mean, it's always been a remarkable thing to me, and I definitely see God in it. So I saw many midrashim and many texts which indicate that this booth that we sit in is our cocoon. In other words, we emerge, we go in, and we have the potential to exit, to go out a completely different entity. And really that's what this whole season is about. Okay? There's a phrase that's bring down in the Ecclesiastes. It says, Yamincha, Smolotachas Laroshi, which means his left is under my head, right? V'yamincha, and your right hand embraces me. It's almost like, you're doing a dance, okay? Your left hand is up beneath my head, and your right hand hugs me, okay?
Like a baby, yeah.
Okay, I was thinking more of a very romantic relationship. Because it really is, okay? In a certain sense, yes, okay, you'll learn that, okay? But it really is indicative of this entire time period, okay? In terms of our relationship with God. When we say, your left hand is under my head, okay? We always associate the left is with really the forces, this is my left. The left is always a force associated with the forces of judgment, the forces of din, okay? As we know that, a person who would write with his left, it used to be called in those days, sinister, right? Like he's not supposed to be using his left hand, okay? But we always do associate left with the forces of judgment or restriction, right? And we always associate the right with kindness. So you have kindness and din, judgment, okay? Always associated, even in Kabbalistic terminology, it's always used like that. So we look at when it says, his left is underneath my head, which means the head is symbolized as Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. The head of the year, the period of time from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur is considered that phase one. That the way we relate to God in these days is done in a modality of awe. We call it the days of awe, right? So it's looked at as, we did call Rosh Hashanah Judgment Day, which is audit day, right? And then we do know that we have 10 days to go ahead and build ourselves, construct ourselves, work on ourselves, change, right? In a certain way, all with the attitude of how we relate to God in the attitude that we call yira. Yira loosely is translated as fear. It's not a great word that people understand when we understand fear, but I use the word awe. Awe is better. Reverence is another type of term. What I like to use, recognized distinction. What do I mean by recognized distinction? A person doesn't relate to their parent in a buddy-buddy. I mean, you can try, but it's never really quite buddy-buddy. Okay? You always have that recognized distinction. They're older, they've been around, they gave birth to you. There's that respect, the awe. There has to be a certain awe that one has for his parent. That is the exact same attitude that we have to have in terms of us and God those first 10 days. It's one of awe. It's when we know that we're being looked at under a microscope. We recognize our flaws, and we do our best to correct them or get ourselves, at least have a plan how to correct them and better ourselves. After Yom Kippur, right? So then starts the other phase. Phase 2 is V'yamincha techapkeni, your right hand embraces me. So God, in terms of his symbolism, in terms of how he relates to the Jewish people, is the hug from the right hand, meaning a pulling in. Okay? So here comes the way we relate to God with love. There's the first days is fear, and then the other days of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, is one of love. So it's an unbelievable time. After Yom Kippur, you go out of Yom Kippur, people are very high, you've been atoned, you've been cleansed of your sins, and now starts a different time period. They actually recommend, after you go home and you break the fast, actually to right away, to show your zealousness to be close to God, to start a mitzvah right away, and it is the mitzvah of Sukkah, to build a Sukkah. Okay? Usually, predominantly in the Orthodox communities, they start after some small thing, even if it's just one little hammer of a nail, moving a board, something towards that, showing that we want to come close and we want to do something. Right? Of course, some people take that a little bit too seriously, and then what happens is worse things happen, that people start doing it at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you have neighbors, and you start hear drilling and sawing, and it has happened, right? It's like, I was in Israel, I'm telling you, it happened. You're sleeping, and 2 o'clock in the morning, you hear zzz, right? Your upstairs neighbor in his balcony starts building a sukkah. I'm like, hey! Right? Oh, did it bother you? Right? Yeah! Just trying to sleep here. You can't, hash v'chalila, God forbid somebody should steal sleep from somebody. You have to be sensitive, okay? But just to show you that these days, one wants to be, we're actually, really we have in tradition, believe it or not, the day after Yom Kippur, till the first day of Sukkot, about a 5-day period, any sins that a person does is not recorded. It's a clean slate. It's weird. What do you mean, Rabbi? Right? Why? What's going on? Right? How do you explain that? What do you mean it's just not recorded? It's not. That doesn't count. It doesn't mean you can go out and party. But what it means is this. Okay? Through Yom Kippur, we beat our chests. Right? We admit to God. We try to muster up a sense of sincerity in terms of our relationship as much as possible. God wipes away our sins. It could, and we learned last time, for those who were in the class last week, that that day of Yom Kippur is an unbelievable day. God actually extracts the Satan from within us. Okay? That there's a verse in the liturgy, in the Siddur, in the prayer books that we do say on Yom Kippur. God says, Shuva Elai ki ga'alticha. Return to me, because I have redeemed you. What do you mean, return to me, because I've redeemed you? Which means the situation we say on Yom Kippur, we say if you take the gematria of Hasatan, which means the Satan or the prosecutor, in a rational term, you'd look at it as our negativity. What goes around comes around. The karma, the tit for tat, the measure for measure, whatever, right? That negativity, right? God actually, on this day, Hasatan, if you add up the numerical value of those letters, because we don't have the numerology, we don't have Roman numbers in Judaism, we use the letters as numbers. Aleph is 1, Beit is 2, Gimel is 3. So if you add up the letters of Hasatan, it adds up to 350, right? 364, okay? 364 is one day shy away from 365. That we're taught that this one day of Yom Kippur, Satan's gone. God removes the Satan.
But who is saying those words?
God is saying this to the children of Israel. Return to me.
But we're reading it.
Yes, because
But
listen,
we're saying
you want all prayer, God doesn't need our prayers. Our prayers are about us integrating and building ourselves. And we need to be totally in alignment with the energy. So we need that emphasis on ourselves. And in the prayer we're saying, God, please just, wipe out all our sins, because you say on this day, you have removed the Satan.
Okay, because you precede it with, because you have said. Do we really precede it with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, there's a few, there's about 3 or 4 verses that we do say that God removes our sins on this day. And that's one of the verses. So so we also say, that's getting into Sukkot actually, that Adam and Eve, who before they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the influence to do evil was external. It was outside, right? It was out there. It wasn't so much as internalized. Once they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so then it became internalized. That means it's not only there's influences out there, but also within us. You could be yourself in a deserted island, and you'll still get thoughts of something might still arise, and midot or bad character traits might still come up. Okay? So therefore, it's kind of like within us. On Yom Kippur, God removes it from within us, puts it back into the mode of Adam and Eve before the Garden of Eden. That actually remains throughout the entire days of Sukkot. Okay? This idea of really the real evil urge that is within us is now more of an external. Actually, it's totally external. Okay? So, the idea of Yom Kippur, we go out and we're clean. However, there might be trace elements still remaining of the old habits. Okay? So that's why we have in our record. So if somebody makes a mistake in those 5 days, so heaven looks at it as it's just part of the old trace elements. It's not something that is willfully done. It's part of the old habits that's still being weeded out. The basic fundamental is, just to cut to the chase, okay, about Sukkah, okay, the mitzvah Sukkah, is if, because there are many questions concerning the booths, but we'll get to it, but if, let's say, right after Yom Kippur, you cleanse yourself, you feel great. There's just some feeling about you. It's awesome. And then all of a sudden, if you didn't have the mitzvah Sukkah, you'd go right back into your house. You'd go right back into your normal pattern of things. So you'll go right back into the bad habits and the bad character traits. God gives us a break. He takes that sincerity that we had, that we mustered up, right? He looks at our plan, our change action plan of who we want to become, our vision, our self-vision of our potential, and he wants us to take it seriously, and he wants to help coach us. He wants us to bring it out. How does he do it? He says, if you go right back into your house, you'll just go right back into your old habits again. You got to go out of your house. You got to go out of your house for 7 days. So therefore, while you're out of your house, we'll look at it that your house is being spiritually fumigated, okay, in a certain sense, right? But more than that, you're going out of your house because you have to change the pattern. You have to make that change that you wanted stick. So just a simple, basic understanding of what Sukkah is about, because they all ask a question. Sukkah, what is Sukkah about? The verse says that, why do you have to dwell in a Sukkah? Because I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when they were in the desert. Great. Commemoration of an event of going out of Egypt, right? Because when the children of Israel left Egypt, I made them to dwell in booths. Therefore, you go dwell in booths. Good. So therefore, have the festival of Sukkot on Passover time. You should be eating matzah in a sukkah. Okay? Don't have it now. What are you having it now for? Right? So, what I just told you is a deeper answer. The basic answer is simply, the reason why we have, one of the basic answers is, why do we have Sukkah now? Should have it on Passover time when we left Egypt. So the reason why is because if we would go live in a Sukkah on Passover time, what's going on Passover time? It's spring. It's starting to get warm, actually. It's always warm here, right? But it's usually springtime. Things are getting warmer. People tend to go outside and have barbecues. So they would see all the Jewish people all of a sudden building these huts and living outside. And the nations would say, they're going outside not because God is commanding them. They're going outside because it's just nice, right? It's nice to go outside. So we want to make sure that we impress upon the world that we're going out, living in a sukkah, because God told us to go live in a sukkah. Okay, so 2 reasons why, okay? So now just to get into those days in between, after, let's say, you have to build your sukkah, there are many, many laws in terms of what a sukkah is and what's a kosher sukkah. The measurements and dimensions, what you could build out of, what you could put on top, it's not a simple thing. There are many, many laws in terms of it, right? You have to have a minimum amount of walls, actually. We know from the word sukkah, I kind of have it here funky, is made out of 3 letters. Samech, Chaf, and Hey. Actually, in these 3 letters, these are really, there's a vav here, but Samech, Chaf, and Hey basically gives us a byline of the dimensions of the sukkah. Samech, it's all closed in, i.e., 4 walls. That's the best. It's great. And if you can't make 4 walls, Chaf, 3 walls. And if you can't do 3 walls, Rabbi, I don't have any wood, then you can do 2 walls and a bit. That's the hay. Okay? They give us all of the dimensions. Okay? They prefer the hay, this little bit, not to be hanging out here. You could have it connected. But basically, the minimum for a sukkah for walls is 2 walls and just a little hand's breadth. A board this long, this wide, sorry. And that's considered your extra wall. And that's a sukkah. That's a kosher sukkah. Okay? The sukkah is also the dimensions of the sukkah. It can't be 30 feet high. That's too high because you have to be able to experience the canopy effect. Okay? It can't be too small. It can't be too narrow. You can basically, if I would cut a phone booth in half and put schach on it, that would be kosher, right? But it can't be like under 10 handbreadths, which is about this. I mean, it talks about the minimum and it talks about the maximum, okay? And then what you can build your walls with. Really, you could even take your animal, and if you tie your animal really good, it can serve as a wall, your donkey, if you want to do that with your donkey. Okay? But it can't move too much. It's not so good. I don't know if your donkey would like it. If you use a tarp or a canopy, right, you have to make sure the canopy is very tight. It cannot sway in the wind more than 3 handbreadths in each direction. If it's too loose and it sways in the wind too much, that's not considered a wall, and therefore that can disqualify a sukkah from being kosher. The top, of course, as we know, must come from something that is grown from the ground and disconnected from the ground. You cannot have lace the top of your sukkah with metal or anything like that that we say can makabel tuma, can contract this lack of life energy. It has to be something that grew from the ground. Okay, if it was something that was made, like I once asked the question last year. I got at Home Depot these matting, the reed mats. People use them like for garden fences. Can I use those as the top? It's all made from like bamboo. They say no because that wasn't made for that purpose. It wasn't made for the sake of schach. Okay, it was made for the sake of something else, a fence, right? So you cannot use it. They do have in New York. They make them just for the purpose. It's very holy. We're going to get into. It's not something to be taken lightly. This is your spiritual Jewish cocoon. Okay? And we're going to get, we'll get into it. Okay?
Do you have to have the roof, actually? Do you have to have the roof?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to have a roof and it has to grow, has to be more shade than sun. And it can't have any trees or awnings above it. It has to be the roof of the sukkah, and the sky. If you have a little bit of trees here and there, you might be able to get away with it, okay? But usually, it can't be under an awning. You can't build a sukkah. It has to be the schach, which is that stuff, and then the sky, straight up.
So you can't put a board across?
Across the top, like a roof?
No, just a board to keep the sky.
You can have you can have boards. It can't be like this wide, a board. It can't be a plank. It could be this wide.
Just for stability.
2x4s are fine.
To keep the sock.
Of course, you
Yeah.
have to have those. Or else,
No,
you know,
we can
yeah,
get long stuff.
preferably not metal beams, but if they are metal, so what we do is we'll put wood on top of that metal and then put the scarf on it. We don't want it touching the metal. Okay?
We see it made of lattice work.
Lattice work is a problem because they make it specifically for fences if you get it at Home Depot. If it's made for the sake of scarf, you got a deal.
Okay.
It's listen, I'm just giving you a little inch that there's complicated things in it, okay? Because these are the laws that are handed down.
Wait a minute. Let's talk about that last phrase. The laws that are handed down.
Yeah, handed down from Moses. Moses handed down the laws of how to make
Okay,
it.
so this is Deuteronomy? Where is it?
Well, all the verse says is, you shall dwell in booths. So,
Right.
hey, if you look at anybody with any intellectual honesty can look at the 5 books of Moses. Let's just backtrack a little bit. And you'll see that in the 5 books of Moses, there's absolutely no details in there whatsoever. When it says, put a frontlet between your eyes, well, what does that mean? If you didn't have Moses coming and explaining to us with the oral law of what a frontlet is, we would never know. I knew people who were Karaites actually with a big pen on a piece of leather drew the 10 Commandments and they tied it right here between their eyes and they go, look, Rabbi, it's between my eyes. Okay? But that's not prescribed by the tradition from Moses.
Okay. So now you're using the word tradition instead of law.
Handed down laws. Well, you're right. There's
There's
Torah law.
difference.
Well, the Torah law, if you look at it, that is prescribed in the 5 books of Moses, to dwell in a booth, doesn't have details. So therefore, Moses gives the description in law form what that thing is. Okay? So really we call it is a mitzvah from the Torah. Don't worry, women are not obligated to sit in the sukkah. To save dirt.
That's another
You're
another
exempt.
issue.
You're not. It's a mitzvah,
No,
but you're not obligated.
no, that's another issue we can discuss.
Okay, no. All right. Okay, because they are we'll get to it.
Ah, yeah, right. Okay.
All right.
There's nothing to discuss.
That's what they say.
Thank you very
He
much.
said there's nothing to discuss.
I feel so sorry for you.
God said.
I don't want to be out of order, but is there a minimum or a maximum amount of time you should spend in the sukkah?
So the time that you should spend in the sukkah is 7 days,
7 full days. You're supposed to sleep there too?
Without any
and
breaks.
never leave. No, I'm just kidding.
You are supposed to
Listen,
do that.
some people. Listen. They say the laws are this. If someone is going to eat a meal, he should eat it in the sukkah. Minimum.
Even if it's
Okay.
raining.
Now, if it's raining and if it's too hot, the bugs are attacking you,
Yeah.
they have the triffids, you can
Oh,
leave the sukkah.
well,
Okay?
you weren't
If you're
there
in
for
SAR in a
that, I
situation where
see
it's
that.
painful to be in,
Mild
you
virus.
can leave it. You're not required to be in it. If it's raining on you, they wait until the bread gets wet and then they leave. Okay? You've got to wait a little bit. Try to push it. Maybe the rain will go away. Maybe not. Whatever it is, of course. But let's say if it's not raining, if you're going to eat a meal of bread, you're required to sit in the sukkah. If you're eating, let's say, a lot of cake, you're required to sit in the sukkah. If you're going to drink a lot of wine, you have to sit in the sukkah. If you're going to have a snack, a fruit, piece of meat, fish, turkey, whatever it is, you're not required to eat it inside of the sukkah. Okay? Now, they say the laws state clearly about sleeping in a sukkah. Okay? There are other customs, okay? That actually, there's certain sect of Hasidim that say no, not to sleep in a sukkah. Okay? Okay, so, but the predominant consensus of the Jewish people mandate 2. It's better to sleep in a sukkah. The best thing, of course, if you're in a situation where, like I say, the bugs are all over the place, the heat, whatever have you. Listen, I knew a guy who put 4 walls, the schach, and he carved himself a hole in that wall and put an AC in. A window unit. 42 PCUs, Rabbi! Check it out! Okay? We can't all do that. Okay? So, but, those are the requirements. Okay? So whenever eating, it's better to go to a sukkah. Okay? But if you're having a vegetable or a salad, one is not required. But the rabbis, they would love to be in a sukkah all the time as much as possible. To learn, to pray, because like I'm going to tell you, it is an unbelievable opportunity for us to change. Okay, and we'll get to it. Okay, to go back just to give us a little bit of a background of where Sukkot, what Sukkot is fixing. Okay. From the sin of man, when Adam in the Garden of Eden ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, in that one action of eating from the tree of knowledge, it said that he broke the three cardinal sins. Okay, it's learned out in the various verses. The sins, the three cardinal sins, basically, that a Jew is required to give his life for, right, are incest, idolatry, and murder. Okay? So in one of those things, idolatry because he wanted to be above God, murder because he brought death into the world, right? Incest because there was just self-gratification in it. Okay? In any case, those three things, actually we learn it way back from Balaam. Balaam, are you familiar with Balaam? Am I pronouncing him right? We know him as Balaam. It was a wicked prophet, one that was hired to go and curse the Jewish people. That's in the book of Numbers. He was hired to go curse the Jewish people. He was finally going, and his donkey saw this angel, and the angel, was on the way with a sword. The donkey saw it. No one else saw it. So the donkey tried to save his master, by going astray. Balaam hits it. Right? They go further. He sees the angel again, and he crushes his leg against the wall. Balaam hits it again. Further from it, there was no place to go. Balaam hits it again. Finally, then, there's a famous talking donkey episode, right? Where the donkey speaks to Balaam and says, in interesting language, why did you hit me these 3 times? So the interesting thing is the language of times that they use. Usually the classic word for times is pa'amim, shalosh pa'amim. It didn't use that word. It used the word regalim. Why are you trying to hit me? Why did you hit me these 3 regalim? Okay? So that everybody, all of the commentators go, why is this strange word used for this? So they comment that the donkey was really hinting to Balaam something else. He's saying this. Why are you trying to hit the people that are keeping the 3 festivals? We call the 3 festivals regalim. Regalim is the root of regalim, is a regel, which means leg, feet, which means pilgrimage festival, which means 3 times a year all of the Jewish people would walk to go to Jerusalem to celebrate these 3 festivals. So they would call it the regel, okay, or the regalim, okay? So the donkey was telling Balaam, why are you trying to hit the Jewish people that keep the 3 regalim? Now that's an interesting phrase, and it's a midrash. And they ask further, the commentaries, why is the donkey picking on this specific mitzvah of the pilgrimage festivals as opposed to any other mitzvah? Pick tefillin, right? Why are you trying to pick on the people that wear tefillin? Why are you trying to pick on the people that pray 3 times a day? Why are you trying to pick on the people that keep the Sabbath? Why are you pick anything else? Why did the donkey, or at least the language, why was this specific mitzvah enumerated? So this is what happened. Because Adam had sinned in the Garden of Eden, and basically committed these, in this one act, committed these 3 sins, right? Therefore, it became incumbent upon mankind, his generations after him, to fix those 3 things. They had to fix those 3 sins. But the generations didn't do it. As you'll see, the door of Enoch, right? The door of Enoch started idolatry. Everybody believed in one God until the door of Enoch came up with a God. Yeah, we'll believe in God, but then there are special favors you can do to the sun and the moon, if we're the servants of God. And then it started to get into, they started worshiping the sun and the moon and everything else. In other words, they had an opportunity to fix idolatry, and they didn't. After that, the generation of the flood. The generation of the flood totally involved in immorality. Completely involved in immorality. They had the ability to fix, right, the sin of immorality, promiscuity, adultery, right? They didn't do it. And then came the generation of the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel, murder. How was the Tower of Babel? Well, they wanted to just build a tower to go up to God. How did that blow it in terms of the sin of murder? You know, when they were building that tower, they were so into building this tower that if a man fell while they were up there high, and a man fell off and died, no big deal. But if a brick fell, they'd mourn for 7 days over the brick. Twisted. Okay? Right? So, they were insensitive to human life. So though through generations, one after the other, didn't seem to pick up the mess that Adam had made. And then came Abraham. Abraham picked up the task of rectifying mankind and rectifying it through these 3 things. Okay? Him and his descendants after him. So now it comes out, actually, that the 3 festivals that we celebrate fix one of those sins. Okay? Passover fixes idolatry. How do we see it fixes idolatry? They were made to take the idol, the god of the Egyptian people, roast it whole, slaughter it, roast it whole, and eat it. Everybody worshipped the goat then. And here they are taking all the goats and they're eating them. So, and you think they were terrified. Are you kidding me? You know, here they are in the Jewish quarter, and there's many more Egyptians around, and we're going to take their God, and we're going to go ahead and eat it. You know, they did it. They overcame it, their fears.
I missed that part. Did anybody else miss that part?
Yeah.
Sheep.
The goat?
It could be a
Oh, the
sheep, goat.
sheep. Oh, the sheep.
Sorry, let's go back.
Slaughtered.
There's something called the Paschal Lamb.
Yeah, okay.
The Paschal Lamb, right? The Paschal Lamb.
Yeah,
Could be a
not
goat,
the
too.
goat.
No,
Right.
I'm from West Texas. There's a big difference between a
Oh, I know.
a lamb and a goat.
Okay, so they took they took their god, slaughtered it, and ate it, right? So the idea here is they rectified the sin of idolatry on Passover. Awesome. Shavuot came the laws of forbidden relationships. When Moses came down the next day, right, they were given new laws who can marry who. It used to be that aunts can marry nephews. From then on, aunts could not marry nephews. Okay? Pre-Sinai stuff. Okay? It fixes basically the sin of adultery and immorality, basically. Okay? And then comes the holiday of Sukkot. The holiday of Sukkot fixes man to man, which is murder. Okay? Really, if you look at it, those three sins, okay, of idolatry, adultery, and murder, really fixes all 3 relationships, because basically all those relationships need to be worked out. Okay? The relationship between man to God, the relationship between man to man, and the relationship between man to himself.
Now, how does Sukkot fix murder?
Sukkot fixes the relationship between man to man. Okay? Since it is the time, actually, the Festival of Sukkot is a time where we offer, actually, 70 bullocks over that holiday in the temple time. 70 bullocks for 70 nations, one for each nation. The nations would come and bring their own sacrifices. It was a time where it rectifies the relationship between man to man. That means it fixes murder. Okay? Man can kill a man in many ways. It doesn't have to be a physical murder, right? It could be embarrassing somebody in public. That's called murder. It could be also saying lashon hara, gossip about him, right? You can ruin somebody's reputation, their business, right? So the idea here is that you see right here the sin of Adam, and you'll see here on the columns 1, 2, and 3: murder, incest, idolatry. Murder is the relationship of man to man, and under it, the Festival of Sukkot fixes that. Okay, just to give you here the entrance into what is the holiday of Sukkot meant to do. Okay, so we say we bring 70 bullocks. Okay, there is a mitzvah to be joyous on this holiday. you'll see that there are many parties that people have. Okay? The Festival of Sukkah has many nicknames to it. Some people call it the Festival of Aaron. These are different midrashim or different texts which bring out different names. They call it the Festival of Aaron. Why do they call it the Festival of Aaron? What is Aaron? Aaron, the brother of Moses. What does Aaron have to do with it? We were taught that in the desert, while they were in the desert, they got 3 gifts, the Jewish people, on the merit of 3 righteous people. The 3 gifts were the manna, that came on the merit of Moses. The water, the well of Miriam, came on the merit of Miriam, the sister of Moses. And the clouds of glory that they had in the desert came on the merit of Aaron.
What's the second one?
Miriam, on the merit of Miriam came the water, the well. You remember Moshe hits the rock, and the water came out, and everybody had to drink. And that just wasn't a couple of drops of water. It was like gush, and it was serious water. Right? So on the merit of those 3 things, on those 3 righteous people, came these 3 things. The clouds of glory. Focus on that. The clouds of glory, we're taught that the booths that we dwell in have to resemble, or they remind us, indicating, symbolic of the clouds of glory.
That stayed over the ark.
That protected the Jewish people on all 6 sides. As we know, it protected them from the sun above. From all 4 sides were the clouds that protected them from enemies shooting arrows and throwing rocks or whatever have you. And on the ground, it protected them from scorpions and snakes. They were protected on all 6 sides. It was like a womb in the desert. Seriously. They had manna falling every day. Right? They had water. They had, it's pretty set. The clothes, if you had dirty clothes, you put it on your chair, go to sleep, you wake up the next night like laundry. Wake up the next morning, it was like freshly laundered. The clothes grew with the kids, right? The shoes, one of these strange phenomena, okay?
How does that correlate with the fact that people were moving all the time?
It moved with them, actually. They had 7 clouds, right? There was 6 clouds on all sides, and then there was the pillar, which when the pillar moved, everybody had to move. Okay? So the clouds moved along with them. Okay? So, but the idea here is, what is Aaron? Who was Aaron? What does Aaron have to do with the clouds? And then what does that have to do with Sukkot? Okay? So who was Aaron? Does anybody know anything about Aaron? What he did? He wasn't that nudge in the Prince of Egypt.
Wasn't he Moses' spokesperson? Moses couldn't speak well, so Aaron spoke for him, did he?
Yes, he was a great orator. He was the priest. He was the first high priest. But what was he busy doing? Wasn't golfing. Right? He was busy all day making peace between man to man and husband to wife. No. He was involved. He was the peacemaker. He would also befriend even the most wicked of people. Like gangsters, he would go and befriend them to bring them close and try to educate them. This is what he was doing. He was the priest.
Now, this is from
Tradition.
Midrash tradition. Okay, tradition.
Okay. Because this is what he would do. Okay, if a wife once was kicked out of her tent by her husband, saying, "I am not letting you back in until you spit in the eye of Aaron." Aaron is the high priest. He's like, he was the prophet. He was the leader until Moses came. Right? He was the leader. Moses was gone out in the desert for 40 years. He was gone, out tending the sheep of his father-in-law. Right? Who was taking care of the Jewish people? He was around. He was it. And here's like the prince, the highest guy. Aaron heard that this man demanded this from his wife. He goes to the woman and says, "Listen, I got a big problem. I got this ailment in my eye. I got this sickness that requires the application of saliva. Can you please?" Okay? To make peace, he was the peacemaker. Okay? So, and if one guy was in a fight with another guy, he would go to this guy and talk to him for hours. He said, "That guy's really upset." He'd make up a story. That guy is so upset about this whole argument between you. He just really wants to make amends, you know. And he would go to the other guy and have the same story, and then when these two guys met, okay, they would make up and make peace. I wish it would happen these days. I've tried it. Right? Okay? And of course, he would go and befriend the most far distant people away from you know, the roughnecks. He would go and befriend him. He would go, hey, yo, Georgie, what's going on, man? Hey, listen, why don't you come to my house for coffee? I want to meet you tomorrow. I want to talk to you for a little bit. And the guy all of a sudden would like, Aaron, he's talking to me? Oh my gosh. I had to go to his wife and say, well, Aaron just invited me to have coffee with it. Right? Not that they had coffee there. But, you know, oh my gosh. So the guy who Aaron would befriend this guy, of course he would just change. Because, oh my gosh, what is he going to think of me if I would go ahead and do these things, right? These, you know, some kind of, you know, things which are less than positive. So he would shed from himself his negative activities. Because here's Aaron bringing him close, right? So what does that have to do with the clouds? Okay, because the clouds is an unbelievable thing, unified everybody, right? It didn't single out people. It wasn't like one cloud got lighter over one guy and it was heavier over another guy. It didn't thin out over the wicked guy. It was always an equal and unifying essence or energy. It put everybody under the same roof. We're all one family. It was an attitude. That's what the clouds of glory do. This is what the Sukkah does. It's a unifying thing. Okay? That's on one level. That's why it's called the Festival of Aaron, which symbolizes the clouds of glory. There are other terminologies that it also brings down. Okay? Here, if you want to turn over the next page. The benefits of a Sukkah. We already talked about the first one, which is breaking the pattern. Okay? That you have to break your pattern, so you got to dwell outside of your home. You know, listen, when I would set up my Sukkah in San Antonio, I'd put a rug there. I put couches. I put not my best couch. I had couches in my garage. I'd put it in. I'd put a lamp. I'd put a coffee table. If I had a lounge chair, I'd make it like people would go in and go, whoa, this is really cool, right? So, you know, it actually make it like a home, not just a rickety table and a broken down chair. Mind you, those are okay, but you're supposed to make it like a home, okay? Because you're supposed to go out of it and live in it.
I love the way you use the word clubhouse.
It is. Listen, it's amazing some of the mitzvahs and the customs that they have in Judaism. It takes out it takes the playfulness out of us, right? So, number 2, remembrance of the miracle. Where is the place in the Torah that mentions Sukkah first? Actually, it's an unbelievable thing. If you look in, we always like to look in the Torah, the first place that any concept, and you can do this with anything, right? We know that the Torah is the blueprint of creation. God looked into the Torah and made the world. So every single thing that we have in this world is the Torah. It's in the Torah. It has a root in the Torah. So if you can find whatever concept, any concept, you name it, if you want to see it, if you want to know what its value is, what's God's opinion? Right? You want to ask God's opinion. Everybody asks so many other people's opinion. Does anybody ever go ask God's opinion? If you want to know what it says that you want to see, and if you can find the earliest place, so you'll have a much more richer understanding in terms of what the Sukkah is. The first place that Sukkah is mentioned in the Torah. Strange phenomenon. You know where? Anybody want to take a shot at it?
It says right here, Bereshit.
Well. But it doesn't say what it talks about. It's in Bereshit. It talks about when Jacob came after he was 22 years from his uncle Laban, right? He had amassed he got his wives, he had kids, he had a lot of sheep, right? And he finally moved back into the land of Israel. He met with his brother Esau, right? He already had that meeting, and he said goodbye to Esau. And then he went, and it says he built huts for the sheep, Sukkot for the sheep. He built houses for the people, his family, and he built huts for the sheep. And then the verse goes on to say, therefore, he called the name of the place Sukkot. Okay? They all ask the question here. The Shemi Shmuel, one of the Hasidic rabbis, says, wait a minute. You go to a place, you're moving back, it's awesome. You build houses for the people, right? And then you build the huts for the sheep. Therefore, you get to call the name of the place Sheep Hut. Hi, you're now entering Sheep Hut. Welcome, population 20. Thank you for entering Sheep Hut. Good to have. Hope your stay was pleasant, right? I mean, what do you call? People are the essence. You build a house. You call the place Wayne Manor, and you build a house for the dog. And therefore, you call the name of your place Dog House, right? You don't call the name of your place. So you build a dog. So you build a hut for the sheep. Therefore, you call the name like Sheep Hut. No, it's a much greater thing, and it leads us into the deeper understanding of Sukkot and what it's about. The idea here is, what is a sukkah? Sukkah is protection, right, from the sun, right? The influence, external influences. The idea here is that here is Jacob bringing all his sheep, but also the people as well. The idea here is he was by the most wicked gangster ever, the ultimate trickster that we have in our history, right? The dark Sith Lord, he was Laban in our tradition. He was the most. He would go and swindle Jacob every time and change his contract 100 times. Can you imagine you made a contract with somebody? Okay, I'm taking the speckled and spotted sheep, and you're taking the white ones, right? And then he'd come back a day later, he sees all these speckled and spotted ones, and he goes, no, we're changing it. You're taking the speckled and spotted, and I'm going to take the straight ones and the brown ones. You know, he would change his 100 times, and drove Jacob crazy, right? Plus, he switched Leah for Rachel. Kind of, he had very, very specific intentions in mind when he did all of that. He had an influence. It was not a good influence. So when he left Laban and he built these huts for the sheep, it was the symbol of protection from negative influence. Okay? The protection from all that negativity, right? He was no longer, it's like he went through therapy, Laban therapy. He was free from being haunted by Laban. All of the ideas and the mishigas and the craziness from his uncle was gone. That's what Sukkah is about. Like I said before, we said on Yom Kippur, we went out, the evil was extracted from us and put outside, right? And then Sukkah, it also is like that. And when we're in this booth, we are protected from the influences, the external influences. Okay? We can go to a very deep level here, but let's just go to number 3, okay? So there was a miracle happened, that there was a protection from external influence. Once again, this is trying to facilitate a change. It's trying to make stick our sincerity that we had on Yom Kippur, that we can continue with that mode of change, that mode of growth, right? So therefore the Sukkah is that keeping the evil outside. Okay? Number 3, we have in Pirkei Avos also brings it down. For every sin a person commits, he acquires for himself a prosecutor. Actually, in Pirkei Avos, chapters of the Fathers. Right? We say for every mitzvah a person does, he requires a defense attorney, an angel. And for every negative action or deed or word or even thought, there's created a negative angel. That angel is called a prosecutor. Okay? It goes up and says, hey, he created me. We need balance. There's a balance due. Okay? So the mitzvah of Sukkah saves one from the prosecutor. How? Even after Yom Kippur, the existence of the transgression is still there. The state that a person is in, like Adam's relationship to the serpent before the sin of the Garden of Eden. Sukkah saves from that internal influence.
Okay, all this is from the Zohar. So this is all mystical?
Yeah, no, it's more like some of it is just Hasidic. If you call it Hasidic mystical. Okay? It's Midrashim. Does that help? Midrash.
Well, when it says
explanation of Midrash.
When it says Zohar.
Yeah. You're right, that is the text. But it's... I said it is quoted in the Zohar. This phrase is in the Zohar, but it is also in Chapters of the Father, which is a Mishnah, which is an oral law. Okay? But the idea here is this, okay? I had a dream once, okay? I used to sleep in a sukkah when I was in Jerusalem, living in Jerusalem, every single night, okay? There was one time I went to my father-in-law's for the holiday, the first night of sukkah. He had such a small sukkah, and there was only space for one bed in it, right? And he was sleeping in it, right? And I wasn't going to try to squish and plus he snored like crazy. So there's no way I was going to sleep in it. I slept inside. I had a dream that night. It was a very interesting dream. I told it to him the next day. And the dream was, I was walking around town, going about from here to there, and there was a guy who was walking alongside of me, right? Wherever I would go, he was there. He wouldn't say anything. He was a mild-mannered guy, right? Very short, skinny, right? Rolled up sleeves, nothing fancy. But he was walking wherever I would go, and I knew inside that this person walking alongside of me could do me some serious damage, right? Now, as I was walking and he's walking alongside me, I'm walking down a corridor into a room. And at the end of the hall was a room, basically a room that people are just like a waiting room in a doctor's office. So I hear saying to myself during this dream, the reason why he can't harm me, as I'm walking into this room, he waits outside. And I walk into the room, is because I can come into this room and sit. And then I sat down. That was the end of the dream. I told it to my father-in-law, and he goes, that's sukkah. Because sukkah, when you're outside, the external influences are there. But because you have the right to sit in the sukkah, you don't have to be sitting in the sukkah. But because you can sit in a sukkah, it's sukkah time. It's sukkah's time, right? So therefore, that negativity can't affect you. It's got only an external type of influence. It's out there, okay? But it goes more, okay? It goes more into an unbelievable thing. That's number 4. Zohar, to quote again, okay, compares also the Sukkah to the Ark of Noah. The Ark of Noah? How's that? The Ark of Noah, though, we can understand in a certain way that one who was in the Ark of Noah, everybody who was inside, they were okay, and everything that was outside was just raging, okay? The turbulent waters outside, okay? So the Sukkah saves us from all of the turbulent thoughts outside. Here we get into something deep, okay? We have time here? I'm a little bit over, okay? It is known in science that all species, in a certain way, through the subconscious, are interconnected through the thoughts. If there's a certain critical mass of one species that adopts a healthier, a happier, or a more advanced style of living, instantaneously it is transmitted to all of the other species. They did it with Ken Kesey and the 100th monkey. They called it the 100th monkey, where the monkeys were on these different islands, right? They didn't have cell phones or texting, okay? And they would feed the monkeys on all of the islands, throwing the potatoes in the sand. The monkeys would come out of the trees, eat the potatoes, and spit out the sand, okay? So they trained one island to train the monkeys to wash their potatoes in the sand. So when a certain amount of monkeys on that one island were washing their potatoes in the sand, instantaneously in all the other islands, the monkeys were washing their potatoes. Now, a friend of mine did some studies on that to try to verify that, and that was not verified. But there were other studies that they did that were verified. There was a family of mice. They split the family. One half of the family was in England, London, the other half in New York. In London, they started to train the mice to go through the maze to get to the piece of cheese, right? Classic mice in the maze, right? They had to train the mice, right? Because usually it's a little trial and error. So finally, they trained all of the mice to go and find that they didn't have to, there was no trial and error. They knew exactly where it was, when to turn left, when to turn right. When they finished training in London, the half of the family, they started to now train the other half of the family in New York. And the family, that mice, went through the maze as if they'd known it They also did it with Skinner pigeons. Okay? The Skinner box, the famous thing, they would put the pigeon in the box and they would have the different colored pegs, right? One for water, one for food, one for warmth, right? One for AC. Okay? Texas pigeon, right? So in any case, it took them forever to train one pigeon, like 8 months to train one pigeon how to peck to get to the right thing, right? 8 months. After they trained that pigeon, they took the second pigeon, put it in. It took also a long time, but less time, 6 months. Then the third pigeon was 4 months. It went down to 2. It went down to just a week. Then it went down to days. Then it got to a point where you can basically take a pigeon anywhere in the world, put him in the box, and he knows what to do. Okay? The idea here is there's an interconnectedness of all of the species. When there's a critical mass that adopts a higher style of living, so instantaneously it goes into the rest of the species. Mankind has yet to develop this, okay? But they actually did studies. There was actually a movie out called What the Belief Do You Know? Did anybody ever see it? Mm-hmm. You saw it? Now maybe you remember. I don't remember exactly. But they did some meditations in certain places where there was a lot of violence. I think Washington, D.C. was a murder capital or something. Where they took some Maharishis or something like that, some meditative yogis, right? And they did whatever their peaceful meditations in a certain level for a certain amount of hours. But now you can have your doubts about this as I do, okay? But they say, because I didn't do my research on it, but they claim that the crime rate significantly went down during the period of time that they were there.
Everybody was going, look at those.
Well, I don't know. I think they were in a van on 5th Street. Okay? You know, what that could be. They were busy.
They're sitting there watching them. Yeah.
Thoughts do have influence. Okay? You could, now we know that in this very room there are radio waves, cell phone waves, TV waves bouncing off the walls. We don't see them. Even if we are not, they still have influence. The mind, the thought waves have influence. They call a Sanskrit word called vrittis, thought waves. Okay? Now, the idea here is this. Jewish people are, I call it 0.01 of the Earth's population, right? Very small percentage, right? And the rest of the world, of all of the billions of people, right? Now, the idea here is this, okay? All of those thoughts, we would like to say that they're all thinking unbelievably positive thoughts. I would love to say that the entire world is just joy to the world and love to everybody. I would like to say that. Okay? Maybe tomorrow. Okay? God willing, the Mashiach should come and everybody should be on the exact right style thinking. But I would think it might be safe to say that most of the thinking patterns of the people in the world tend to be negative. For the majority. Okay? So that negative thoughts, that negative thinking, don't think that you're impervious to it. It has an influence. So the idea here is the Sukkah is the booth that saves you from that influence. In other words, Ark of Noah, right? The Ark of Noah, here you are sitting in this little booth, and all of those thoughts, weird as enough as it sounds, bounce right off, right? So here is the place. This is the ultimate concept of Sukkah, where you can finally think clearly. If you're ever even a minute or moments, a few moments in the Sukkah, you should try to just simply ask a question to yourself. How do I see myself spiritually in a year from now? Or get a vision of your potential, what you could be. That is the thoughts that you can think. They also call the Sukkah, one rabbi called it the incubator.
But that's very hard to do when there are other people in there too.
Yeah, I know.
So it's really,
But
if you can get in there,
no, that's good. And or even better, you can go ahead and share with them this idea that everybody can sit and have a silent moment
that's good too.
to visualize themselves in their potential state, that their potential is actualized. Okay? Take a moment of silence now and picture yourself as a much more developed person. You now are who now have reached your potential. You have to get a vision, you have to reach for it. Okay? Here's the place where you can think. Okay? Now, the why is that, and I will bring again, this word sukkah. Okay? I said that before, if you'd spell the whole word out, this is really not a root word, a letter, vav, but really it's spelled samech vav chaf hey. Samech vav chaf hey, right? If you add up the numerical value of samech vav chaf hey, it ends up being 91. Right? This is 60, this is 6, this is 20, this is 5. It ends up being 91. Okay, interesting number, 91. Very interesting number. If you'll add up the numerical value of two names of God that we have.
Oh, you put the vav with it to make 60.
Yes, to make, this is, samech is 60, vav is 6, chaf is 20, hey is 5. So it's 60, 60, 66, 76, 86, and plus 5 is 91. Okay? If you add up the numerical value of the name of God, our holy name of God, which is the four letters of Yud and Hey, Vav and Hey, that's 26. If you add up the numerical value of the name of Adonai, Aleph and Dalet and Nun and Yud, right? This is 65, this is 65, this is 26. 65 plus 26 is 91. In other words, when you build a sukkah, you are making an atomic reactor out of household materials. It's a cosmic generator. Now it goes even further. I'm going to tell you something even more wild. Hey, until you try it, don't knock it. Okay? Try it out.
But I'm saying that you don't have to wait for sukkah to do that.
You can do it any time of year. As a matter of fact, you can be the walking sukkah all year long.
But it's the wisdom of Judaism that made you do it at least once.
But you have that exactly. You need the experience, and then all of the holidays are like that. You have to take Rosh Hashanah with you every day. You have to take Yom Kippur with you every day. Every day of the year is Yom Kippur. You have to have the experience in order to try to get a greater experience and take it with you. Okay? Now I forgot what I was going to talk about. Oh, here it is. Okay. Here's where it goes and puts everything together. Okay? Not only do you get to think straight, but now, because you can think straight, you can now use this, I'm telling you, it's nuclear, out of household material. You can now transform the world. How do you do that? Okay? Because of this. We say that if a person does tshuva from fear, meaning he's afraid of a tit for tat, he's afraid of what goes around comes around, of his negativity coming back to him, right? And therefore he changes, right? It's an awesome thing. We say all of his sins that he's done on purpose are transformed to being considered as if they were done on accident. Okay? So it's as if all of his mistakes that he's made, willful, let's say, right, are considered as if they were done on accident. For sure the ones on accident are atoned for. But if a person does tshuva from love, meaning he just, I love God so much. I just want to give God nachas. All I want to do is just give you nachas, God. God, you're so good to me. Oh, so many blessings. Here I am sitting in this booth, and I see that, you're protecting me from all sides. And as you protected all of the Jewish people, all of these years, I just want to come close. I just want to do the right thing just out of love. A person who does tshuva, repents, comes back from love, they say all of his willful sins are transformed to being merits. Mitzvot. It's an unbelievable transformation. You really got to think. It's a very deep conversation. Okay, I'm already way over time. Just that is just like, what is that? Okay, because really we say when you used energy, when a person uses energy for a sin, he used energy. If you carve out, there is still holy sparks that were involved because the person has a holy soul. There were some kind of holy sparks that were involved in that act. So basically what it is, it's like a diamond embedded in some serious coal that need to be chipped away to get to the diamond. There is holiness even in the most wicked of acts. Okay? The interesting thing, just an example of Lot and his daughters. Do you call Lot and his daughters? Lot. Thank you. Lot. Not Lot. Lot and his daughters. He sleeps with his daughters. Oh my gosh. Kind of. You know who came from them? You know who came from them? Ruth. Ruth. You know who Ruth is? Ruth.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hebrew. Ruth. Who came from Ruth? King David. Oh my gosh. It's like the holiest thing from the darkest act. Right? So the idea here is, while we're in the Sukkah, and that's what Aaron is about, because Aaron is about love. Aaron is about embracing. This period of time is about God embracing us. There's a period of time where the love has to increase. Love between us and our fellow man. Love, and certainly love between us and God. And therefore, that love of God that we try to instill, to integrate, to maximize, helps us, guides us to do what's called tshuva from ahava, repentance from love, to change from love, an attitude of love. And therefore, when we change the attitude of love, all that negativity that's outside the sukkah, remember the guy who was following me, right? He had to stay outside. All that negativity turns into merits. They turn into sweet dancing chassidim. I don't know about that. But, okay? But they'll turn into merits. You sweeten the world. It's the ultimate transformational boost. Not only you become transformed, but you've transformed all those around you. And the bad air around you becomes transformed. Okay? All that negativity. It's a lot of potential. I've said a lot. Okay? But just to give you a little bit of a glimpse or an idea or a couple of ideas about, wow, okay, the sukkah is hot, okay? And I really love what you said, but you want to take that experience with you all the time, okay? You could do tshuva from love every moment, any moment. You can, right? But it's a great, we need, to have that experience of being in the sukkah, okay? The Zohar calls it the shadow of faith. The last thing the Zohar calls it, the shadow of faith. Seil dehemenusa, right? Because it is the ultimate idea or concept of us making that connection with God, of 100% faith, where you've total movement. Because here you are, you're in a flimsy little booth, right? But yet we know that God protects us. And with that, we develop our faith to a greater degree. All right? Good?
Good. Thank you.